it lives up to its expectations. We must warn you, however, that the situations you are about to see are extreme and will most likely not occur in a kitchen environment. Hopefully. We thought it would be best to next move on to something a little more severe. We took our Vollrath frying pan and put it to the test against a concrete pole. After one good knock to the bottom, a nice sized dent was left. Now, like we said, you probably won't encounter a situation where you need to hit a frying pan against a concrete pole multiple times and still retain functionality. That being said, the pan still did a good job of holding up, until we brought out the sledgehammer. We asked a few of our employees to take a whack at denting this pan, literally. So, what happens when you take a few warehouse workers, a sledgehammer, and this pan? Take a look.
Kind of microorganisms breaks down chemicals into harmless components, carbon dioxide and water, and vibrates the dirt off, as I mentioned, and makes it much safer to consume. Now also, while the food is soaking in the water, it gets more hydrated and it lasts longer and it tastes better too. So I'm going to fill this with water and show you how to use it. Okay, we're back. We've got our water in our unit and we're ready to go. Now normally you put this in your sink and use it there because you can drain it right there and fill it easily. For ease of videotaping, we're doing it here so you're not looking at my back while I'm talking to you. So we've got it full, ready to go. So we're going to take our basket and place it inside here. We've got some corn and carrots. I'm going to put in here.
Temperature is needed in making lagers. One of the most important steps to successful home brewing is proper cleaning and sanitizing. We recommend cleaning with a product originally developed for Coors called PBW or powdered brewery wash. Use 1 to 2 ounces per gallon for cleaning kettles, 3/4 of an ounce per gallon for fermenters, kegs, tanks, and other equipment. Soak equipment overnight in PBW solution and rinse the following morning. No scrubbing is required. After the surfaces have been cleaned, they can then be sanitized with a product like Star San. A dilution of as little as 1 ounce to 5 gallons of water is sufficient. Allow 30 seconds of contact time. No rinsing is required. Your kit will usually include a sample of these chemicals, in addition to brushes for removing any stuck-on material in carboys, bottles, and other equipment. Previously used bottles are probably the most tedious thing to clean. A bottle washer and tree can help with that. Of course, new bottles are always available as well. Everything that touches your beer needs to be sanitized. With all your equipment cleaned and sanitized, it's time to start your brew. Take a look at the recipe included in your kit and make a note of when the hops and other ingredients should be added. Times are denoted in the length of time from the end of the boil. For example, a hop addition at 60 minutes in a 60-minute boil will be added right at the beginning. A hop addition at 45 minutes in a 16-minute boil will be added 15 minutes into the boil, letting it boil for 45 minutes. Make a note of the optimal fermentation temperature indicated on the yeast package as well. The recipe should also provide original and final gravity numbers. Note these down. We'll discuss their importance later. The kit will also include 6 to 9 pounds of dry or liquid extract. This is the base ingredient you'll be using for your beer. If you're using liquid extract, place the container in hot water so that it will easily pour. Start heating 3 gallons of water in your brewing kettle. If your ingredient kit includes crushed grains, place them in a muslin bag. You can tie the end of the bag to the pot handle to keep the bag from burning on the bottom of the pot. Steep the grains between 150 and 158 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 to 30 minutes. Remove the grain bag and let it drain out. Take the pot off the burner and pour in the extract. Mix continually while adding the extract. We now have what brewers call wort. Bring the wort to boil, stirring every few minutes. Add hops at the time specified in the recipe. Don't cover the pot. Boiling releases volatile compounds that produce off flavors in the finished beer. As the temperature increases, a smooth foam will form on top of your wort. Spraying cold water and stirring will keep the foam from rising over the top or boiling over. Shortly after this point, proteins coagulate, making the wort look a bit like egg drop soup. This is called hot break. A tablespoon of Irish moss or tablet of Whirlfloc can be added in the last 10 to 15 minutes to help clarify the beer. After an hour has passed, turn off the burner and let the boil end before moving the pot. During the boil, you achieved a hot break that will help reduce chill haze or a foggy look in your finished beer. You're now going to chill the wort as quickly as possible. Just like in the hot break, you'll see proteins grouped together and drop to the bottom. This is the cold break. Chilling the wort quickly also reduces the chances of wild yeast or bacteria contaminating the beer. You can accomplish this with an ice bath, placing the pot in another container filled with cold ice water, or by using a wort chiller. Wort chillers are available in a few different types and make this process quick and easy. They typically connect to a standard garden hose and use cold water to quickly lower the temperature of the wort. Bring the pot up to full volume by adding cold water. When the wort is cooled between 70 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit, transfer the wort using an auto siphon into a fermenter, either a glass carboy or food-grade bucket. Brewers refer to this as racking. Try to stay off the sediment bed by keeping the siphon about an inch from the bottom of the pot. This is also a good time to take a hydrometer reading and compare it to the original gravity specified in the recipe. We'll cover how to do this in detail later. Add oxygen or aerate by shaking the fermenter for 45 seconds. While yeast can live anaerobically, that is, without oxygen, they require it to adjust to the environment in the wort. Under-attenuated fermentation, or fermentation where all of the sugars have not been converted, may result from low oxygen levels. Some home brewers use pure oxygen bottles for this step. Degassing tools used in winemaking to remove suspended carbon dioxide can also be used in place of shaking to aerate wort. Just attach to a drill and let spin. This method eliminates the risk of accidentally dropping the carboy. Pour or pitch the yeast and affix an airlock or blow-off tube to the fermenter. Both liquid and dry yeast can be pitched directly into wort, but a starter is suggested when using liquid. We'll explain how to make a yeast starter later. Airlocks and blow-off tubes allow gases released from the fermentation to escape, while preventing air from entering and potentially spoiling the beer. Airlocks come in two varieties, 3-piece and bubble. A 3-piece airlock is suggested at this point, but there are some occasions when a blow-off tube may be needed. If your recipe specifies an original gravity of more than 1.060, if there is very little headspace, empty space left in the top of the fermenter, or if you're using a Hefeweizen or Belgian yeast, a blow-off tube will prevent the fermentation from overflowing through the airlock. Attach a hose to the barb inside of the airlock and submerge the other end in a jar of water or diluted sanitizer. Place the fermenter in a cool place away from light. Check the temperature when you see bubbling in the airlock, indicating active fermentation. Some yeasts will start in a few hours, others can take up to 48. This period of time is called the lag phase, during which the yeast adjust to their new environment and undergo high growth. With the airlock bubbling away, the yeast have now entered the exponential growth phase, which will last 1 to 4 days. This is when the sugars are consumed and alcohol and CO2 is produced. At the height of this activity, the beer is said to be at high krausen, krausen being the thick foamy head in the top of the fermenter. Stay as close to the optimum fermentation temperature as possible during this stage. Place the fermenter in a tub of water or wrap it in a wet towel to lower the temperature. Some homebrewers use a spare refrigerator and temperature controller to achieve optimal fermentation conditions. Yeast produce a class of molecules called esters at higher than recommended temperatures, leading to fruity aromas and flavors in your beer. If the temperature is too cold, the yeast will go dormant. After 2 to 6 days, or when the bubbling rate in the airlock drops to 1 to 5 a minute, you have the option of transferring your beer into a secondary fermenter. This improves clarity by reducing the amount of sediment in the finished beer. It is suggested if your recipe calls for dry hops or dry spices, that is, hops or additives added at this stage. Use an auto-siphon to rack the beer into a secondary fermenter, being careful not to agitate the beer, which adds oxygen. You want as little empty space, or head space, on the top as possible. In the primary, a protective layer of CO2 is formed. The yeast will rebuild this layer in the secondary. With the completion of the exponential growth phase, we now have green beer. The beer is referred to as green because it does not yet have an acceptable balance of flavors. In the last phase, the stationary phase, the yeast clean up after themselves. They absorb some of the byproducts created in earlier phases, like diacetyl. You will sometimes hear this phase referred to as the diacetyl rest. Now, we wait for the yeast and other sediment suspended in the beer to flocculate, group together, and sink to the bottom. This will take a few days. Is your beer ready to bottle? The best way to tell is to take a hydrometer reading. Place a sample of your wort into a hydrometer test jar. Spin the hydrometer while placing it into the jar to remove any bubbles that might be clinging to it. With the sample at eye level, look to see where the liquid crosses the markings. If the reading is lower or matches the final gravity specified in your recipe, congratulations, you are ready to bottle. If not, wait a few days and check again. A hydrometer measures the density of beer relative to water. Hydrometers will read 1 on the specific gravity scale in 60° Fahrenheit distilled water. Specific gravity is the scale most homebrewers use in the United States. Your hydrometer may also read in Brix or Balling and potential alcohol. The Balling scale is not typically used in the U.S. ABV, alcohol by volume, can be calculated by subtracting final gravity from original gravity and multiplying by 131, or simply subtracting the first reading from the second using the potential alcohol scale. Temperatures below or above 60° Fahrenheit will throw the reading off a bit. Use the chart included with your hydrometer to correct the reading. With fermentation complete, you now have the option to bottle or keg your beer. Kegging is a quick and easy alternative to bottling. It requires an initial investment, usually $200 to $250,